You know, when Italians first came to America, they were kind of forced together. And so when they got here, they were all kind of forced to live together, but 2 blocks over would have been people from Naples, living a block away from people from Sicily, another block away from people from Puglia, and so on. They'd have no communication even with each other. There was a lot of discrimination against Italians. These were very isolated, insulated communities. It wasn't an organized mafia at that point, nationally or even within the city, even within neighborhoods. It took a long time for law enforcement to really crack these very complex, dynamic social structures of Little Italies around America, because they were truly like these insular kind of colonies. If you came up here up until about 20 years ago, it was still very Italian. You'd find old ladies hanging laundry out the window, tomatoes growing on all the fire escapes, very utilitarian storefronts, meaning cheese shops, butchers, tailors, soccer clubs, pastry shops, things like that. As of today, all of the Italians are completely gone. Every one of these storefronts are very high-end designers. The rents are very expensive. Pretty much everybody that lives here is 30 years old and younger. It's very hip and trendy. In fact, they don't even call this Little Italy anymore. There's a new term, if you look at all the maps, it's called Nolita, which means north of Little Italy. So if you ask any of these kids where Little Italy is, they'll say, oh, you gotta walk 3 blocks down and make a right. Meanwhile, we've been in the middle of what's been Little Italy for over a century, and it's pretty much erased within a generation, completely overnight. By the 1970s, I believe there were over 2,000 murders a year in New York City. It was one of the most dangerous cities in America. We had entire neighborhoods that were burned out and, abandoned. Little Italy was always known as the safest neighborhood in America. That was the term that was applied to it because it was very safe. There were social clubs on every block. There were always guys out at all hours of the night. They kept it very, very safe. One side of my family had the same apartment for about over 90 years, just a block away from the RAVENITE. Even when I was growing up, there was still sometimes 3 Mafia social clubs in every block down here. It was very open. Everybody knew each other. They knew the names of everybody. It was almost like they were local celebrities. The club was very fortified. It was like a brick wall. I remember it had at one point had a little screen door, like a swinging country door. They kept it open all the time. Nobody's going to go rob the place, of course. There were always some guys milling around, but not really until the Gotti era, where you'd see a large concentration of people hanging out. Apparently weekly he held meetings there, so he had representatives from all the crews have to meet him there, so it's a little bit of a bigger deal during the Gotti era. But apparently the club goes back to at least the 1950s with Carlo Gambino, who they named the Gambino crime family after. From what I understand, it started out as the RAVENITE Social Club, like Knights of Columbus, and eventually morphed together by the time of the 1970s and the era of Neil Della Croce, who grew up across the street from the RAVENITE. And so it kind of took on a different persona during the Gotti era. It became a little bit more openly active.